Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating collection of readings. It's a synthesis centered around this really intense dynamic,
Yeah.
between profound divine assurance and the radical need for human striving.
That tension is exactly it. It's what makes these sources so compelling, I think. We're looking at extracts from the lectionary for October 29th, 2025. And for you listening, the lectionary, it's basically the scheduled readings. And this week, wow, it brings us face to face with two ideas that, on the surface, seem almost contradictory.
Right, like how can both be true? You've got the certainty of God's plan on one hand.
And then the almost terrifying difficulty of personal salvation on the other, the effort involved.
So our mission for you today is really to understand how these two truths, this cosmic help from the Spirit in Romans, and then this narrow, almost agonizing effort Jesus demands in Luke, how they don't cancel each other out.
Exactly. But rather how they define the real nature of walking this path.
And our sources.
We've got extracts from Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 8. That really lays out a divine blueprint, you could say. Then we jump straight into Luke chapter 13, where Jesus gets this direct question about who actually gets into the kingdom.
And we'll use some supporting psalms and reflections too, right? To kind of bridge the gap between these big ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start with Romans, with that incredible support system Paul talks about.
Right. Part 1, the divine blueprint, help for our weakness. Paul kicks this off by admitting something pretty universal, I think. It feels deeply relatable. He just says it plainly. We do not know how to pray as we ought.
Yeah. And that's not just about, finding the perfect words.
No.
It's deeper. It's about not even knowing what we truly need or what aligns with God's ultimate plan for us. It's an admission of profound human weakness, ignorance, really.
We're often praying for maybe comfort or small fixes.
Completely missing the bigger picture, the necessary transformation. But what's fascinating here is Paul's solution. It's not a to-do list. It's like immediate cosmic intervention. The Spirit comes to the aid of our weakness.
That phrase, comes to the aid, it really suggests someone stepping in when you're failing, right? When you just can't do it yourself. How does Paul describe this intervention? Because it sounds, intense.
Oh, it is. He says the Spirit intercedes with inexpressible groanings. Now, intercedes, think of that as advocating for you, speaking on your behalf.
But inexpressible, so beyond words.
Utterly beyond language. It's this deep, nonverbal communication of our real needs, our deepest desires, straight to the divine. It's like help happening on a completely different frequency, a spiritual one.
So, okay, if we can't articulate what we need, the Spirit does it for us.
Precisely. And Paul assures us the system is, foolproof. He says, the one who searches hearts knows what is the intention of the Spirit, because he intercedes for the holy ones according to God's will.
So there's perfect alignment then.
Perfect alignment between our actual needs, the Spirit's intercession, and God's ultimate will. It guarantees the help is always directed towards our true good and God's established purpose.
And that leads directly to maybe the most famous assurance Paul gives, that anchor of confidence.
Well,
all things work for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose.
it's a huge statement, massive confidence, and it implies a detailed plan, a kind of destiny, doesn't it?
It really does.
And this is where Paul lays out the structure of that divine purpose. He details what's often called the golden chain of salvation. It's very structured, a 5-step progression that just defines certainty.
Okay, break down that chain for us.
It starts with foreknew. God knew them beforehand. Simple as that.
Okay, foreknew. What's next?
From foreknew, they are predestined, predetermined.
Yeah.
And the goal is specific to be conformed to the image of his son. So becoming like Christ. That's the target.
Foreknew, predestined, then.
Then they are called. After being called, they are justified.
Okay, justified. Let's pause there for a second. For listeners maybe newer to this, what does that term mean, practically speaking, in this context?
Yeah, good question. In simple terms, justification means being declared righteous. It's a divine verdict. It changes your status guilty to innocent, essentially.
So it's a legal or spiritual standing. Huh?
Exactly. Right,
Yeah.
with God. And importantly, it's irrespective of your current performance or feelings. It's a declared status. And once justified, the final link in the chain, they are glorified.
Wow. So foreknowledge, predestination, calling, justification, glorification. It links God's eternal knowledge straight to ultimate glory. That sounds unshakable, like a guarantee.
It is. It's absolute assurance for those who are, as Paul says, called according to his purpose.
Okay, here's the rub, right? If Paul gives us this linear, assured plan, this predestination towards glory, how do we square that certainty with the radical demand for effort that Jesus talks about in Luke? If the chain is fixed, why do we have to strive so hard?
And that is the central paradox we have to hold on to.
Okay.
That's the core of this deep dive, really. The certainty in Romans defines the source of the power and the ultimate goal.
Okay.
But the demand in Luke, that defines the necessary human participation, the action required to receive that power and actually live it out. They work together.
Right. So one doesn't negate the other. Okay, let's move to Luke then, part 2. The mandate to strive, entering the narrow gate.
So the scene is Jesus teaching, heading towards Jerusalem, and someone in the crowd asks this huge existential question. Lord, will only a few people be saved?
It's basically asking for the numbers, right? What are my
Exactly. And Jesus just completely sidesteps the census question. He doesn't give a number at all. Instead, he gives a command. And it's focused entirely on individual responsibility.
Which is?
Strive to enter through the narrow gate.
Okay, that word strive, we need to dig into that. It doesn't sound like a casual suggestion, like give it a go.
Not even close.
Yeah.
The Greek word behind it is agonizomai. You can hear a word agony in it.
Ah, agony, right.
It implies intense, agonizing effort. Think of an Olympic athlete pushing to the point of utter exhaustion, or a soldier fighting for their life. This isn't about casual faith or just, showing up politely. It's full body, sustained, painful commitment.
And Jesus immediately follows that command with a warning that makes the need for that agony crystal clear. He says, many will attempt to enter.
Right, they'll try. Maybe they're casual strivers, but they will not be strong enough.
They won't have the strength because they didn't put in the agonizing effort.
That seems to be the implication. They attempt entry, but they haven't done the work, haven't built the spiritual muscle maybe to get through that narrow path.
Yeah.
And the scenario Jesus paints next is, it's chilling.
The master locks the door.
Yeah. And those left outside start pleading their case.
And what's their argument? They claim familiarity, right? We ate and drank in your company and you taught in our streets. They're basically saying, hey, we know you. We hung out.
They're leveraging proximity, association. They were physically present. They saw the miracles, heard the teaching. They thought that was enough.
They mistook being near the fire for actually being warmed by it.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
The confused external connection with internal transformation. They thought association with the teacher was the ticket in. But the master's rejection is just absolute. And this is where the passage really lands with force.
He says it twice. I do not know where you are from. Depart from me, all you evildoers. Okay, wait, evildoers? Why? They sound like people who were, following along, part of the religious crowd. Why call them that just for claiming they knew him?
That's the critical point, isn't it? They missed the internal standard of the narrow gate. While they were busy eating and drinking with Jesus, maintaining maybe an outward show of piety, they failed to undergo the inner change.
The change that the narrow gate forces, like shedding things.
Exactly. Shedding pride, selfishness, maybe hypocrisy. The master's judgment isn't based on their attendance record. It's based on their inner character, which, despite being near the truth, remained rooted in, evil practice. Mere association doesn't cut it. The narrow gate demands genuine, often painful, internal change.
And the consequence, if you fail that internal test, it's described physically, horrifyingly. Wailing and grinding of teeth. That severity really drives home the urgency of the command to strive, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. But interestingly, right after this scene of rejection, Jesus paints a picture of radical inclusivity. It softens the blow maybe slightly, but it also heightens the contrast.
He talks about who does get in?
Yes. He describes who will be welcomed at the heavenly banquet. And it's a complete reversal of expectations for the people listening to him at the time.
How so?
He says people will come from the east and the west and from the north and the south, and they'll recline at the table. It's his image of global inclusion. People previously considered outsiders are now sitting down with the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all the prophets.
Wow. So the contrast is stunning. The insiders, the ones who claim familiarity, they're cast out. But people from the furthest corners, they're welcomed in.
And this leads to that powerful final statement from Jesus. It completely overturns the whole spiritual economy they understood. For behold, some are last who will be first, and some are first who will be last.
A total reordering.
A complete reordering based on the criteria of the narrow gate, not on perceived status or privilege. The humble, the outsider who strove sincerely, they're in. The arrogant, comfortable insider who just relied on who they knew, they're out.
So even with all this talk of striving and agony, there's still this underlying need for God's help to even stay on the path, right? I think we see that echoed in the psalm for the week, Psalm 13. It sounds pretty desperate.
It really does. The psalmist is clearly struggling, feels like the light is fading, hope is disappearing, and they cry out, "Give light to my eyes that I may not sleep in death."
A prayer for illumination.
Exactly. It's recognizing that even the act of striving needs divine guidance. We need God's light to make sure we're running the race correctly, striving for the right things, not just running blindly or striving in our own strength for the wrong goals.
Okay, so this brings us to the synthesis, part 4. How do we actually walk this path daily? We've got the unconditional assurance from Romans, the golden chain, and then the radical, almost terrifying demand of the narrow gate from Luke. How do we hold those together? How do we live that?
Right. The synthesis, I think, is this. The certainty of the golden chain, God's foreknowledge, predestination, the promise of justification, that's the divine grace that makes the striving possible in the first place.
Okay, it enables the strider.
It empowers it. Our striving, our agonizomai, is the active, sincere, moment-by-moment response to that grace. The Spirit helps our weakness, like Romans says.
So that we actually have the strength to push through the narrow gate that Luke demands.
Exactly. So striving isn't about earning salvation through effort. It's more about demonstrating the sincerity of the internal change that was necessary to even want to pass through that gate and to be able to.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the reflection source we looked at makes it really clear what defines successful striving. It's not just effort alone. It has to be matched by inner truth, by humility, by a sincere heart.
And the narrow gate is narrow because?
Precisely because it forces us to shed the baggage, the stuff that isn't Christ-like. And that baggage, according to the reflection, really boils down to 3 major obstacles for most of us.
Okay, let's name them, because these are the practical things, right? The things you, the listener, can actually look at in your daily life.
Absolutely. The reflection identifies them as pride, selfishness, and comfort.
Okay, pride first. How does that block the gate?
Pride stops us from accepting we're wrong, from taking correction. It makes us rely on our own status or knowledge, maybe like those people claiming association with Jesus. We know things, we were there.
Right, and selfishness?
Well, that stops us loving our neighbor as ourselves, doesn't it? It keeps our focus inward, on our own needs and wants, rather than outward in service or compassion. The narrow gate requires looking beyond the self.
And the last one? Comfort. That sounds maybe less like a sin and more like nice.
But it can be insidious. Spiritual comfort, the constant avoidance of anything difficult or challenging or sacrificial, that guarantees we never engage in the agony required for real change. If you always choose the wide, easy, comfortable road,
you simply won't fit through the narrow gate. It requires shedding that desire for ease. Wow. Okay. That really brings the urgency home. Choosing comfort over commitment day after day, that is the failure that leads to being outside that locked door.
Exactly. And this commitment to inner sincerity, to getting rid of that baggage, is captured beautifully by the psalmist in the reflection source, quoting Psalm 86, verse 11. "Teach me your way, O Lord, that I may walk in your truth. Give me an undivided heart to fear your name."
An undivided heart. That sounds like the direct opposite of that surface-level familiarity the master rejected.
Precisely. It's the sincerity, the wholeness that aligns our inner life, our heart with our outer striving. No hypocrisy, no division.
And the reflection really hammers home that this isn't a one-time decision, is it? It's daily, continuous.
Yes, it's not about what you did last year or even yesterday. It's about the choice right now. The reflection says, each day is an opportunity to walk closer with Christ. Every morning, effectively, you have to choose again. The easy road of comfort or the painful, necessary effort of the narrow path.
So wrapping this up, this deep dive, it feels like it's really shifted how we might see these texts. We started with Romans, with that profound, almost unbelievable assurance the Spirit intercedes, God works all things for good, the golden chain holds.
Unshakable promises.
But we finished with Luke's radical demand. That assurance isn't automatic. It's activated, it's lived out through the sincere, agonizing effort required to shed pride, selfishness, and our addiction to comfort.
Yeah, if we connect this back to the big picture for you listening, the key takeaway is that the certainty of the final outcome, glorification, doesn't eliminate the need for radical day-to-day sincerity and effort, the striving. The paradox isn't meant to confuse us. It's meant to propel us forward.
Which leads to a final thought, maybe a challenge.
I think so. Considering frankly, the severity of Jesus' words in Luke about striving and the narrow gate, What's one small concrete thing you can do today? Not tomorrow, not next week, but today. How can you live out your faith in action, specifically by letting go of a bit of comfort or a piece of pride to better align yourself with what that narrow gate requires?
That's a challenge that definitely requires an undivided heart to even answer honestly, and that feels like the right place to leave our deep dive for today.